Welcome to Reading Slow. Today I'm here to bring you my Tome Topple TBR. Now, Tome Topple is a readathon hosted by ThoughtsonTomes where there is only one rule, which is to read tomes. Tomes are books bigger than 500 pages. So expect a lot of big books in this TBR, because it's all big books. I will put the link to Sam, the host's announcement video. This is actually round 12 of Tome Topple, though I haven't actually participated in one before. Now, there are prompts for this readathon. The readathon lasts for 2 weeks from the 8th to the 22nd of August. Now, there is one rule, which is to read tomes, but there are 9 prompts. I am not doing one of the prompts because one of the prompts is to read a book you started in another Tome Topple. And I haven't participated before, so I won't be doing that one. You can double up on prompts, but only a maximum of 2 prompts per book. But I'm going to be going through the prompts and telling you what I've got on my TBR, even though I do not expect to get through all of these books. I just want a large selection so I can just go with the flow. The first prompt is to read the book that has been on your TBR the longest, which actually is Les Mis. I won't be reading this because I have already started this, and so one of the whole things about Tome Topple is you read a book completely in Tome Topple, and this is massive and time consuming, so I'm going to be reading this one over several months. Now, the next contender is War and Peace. War and Peace, a book so big. It's 2 books, and each book is actually over 700 pages each, and the writing is tiny. Now, I don't think I'll be getting to War and Peace, and even though it has been on my TBR the longest, it hasn't actually been on my physical TBR the longest. That belongs to the Mistborn trilogy. I picked this up in 2013 when I didn't know who Brandon Sanderson was. I had no idea what this trilogy was about. I just saw the whole trilogy in the charity shop, pristine condition, and I picked all 3 up for £1.50, which is an amazing deal, and I couldn't pass it up. And now I've read the first book. I am halfway through the second book. Hopefully I'll be finished by the time Tome Topple comes around, and the third book will be on my list as the book that's been on my TBR the longest. Next up, Tome audiobook. I will be adding The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty to my list because I've heard amazing things, and it's about time that I picked it up. The mythology that it includes is right up my alley, and I have just been wanting to read it for the longest time, and it is time. Most recent acquired tome, Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb, book 3 in the Farseer trilogy. I haven't picked this up yet because it's a lot bigger than the previous books, and they always take me such a long time to read because they're so descriptive and there's so much going on, and it feels like it takes forever just because there's so much to absorb. This book is 838 pages. And when I say that, it literally goes right up to the end. So I'm excited, but I'm also nervous. Next up, standalone tome. I don't actually have a lot of standalones that are over 500 pages, usually because you usually get contemporary standalones, and contemporaries usually aren't that big. And if it's a fantasy, they're usually series, and so you don't see many. The Priory of the Orange Tree is actually amazing. It's a standalone fantasy with dragons by Samantha Shannon. amazing, but I've already read it. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke is quite possibly the only standalone that I have on my shelves. And this clocks in over 1,000 pages. I do have an audiobook planned, as I usually read maybe one audiobook a week at that size. The Queens of Innis Lear, which is a King Lear retelling. I don't know too much about it, but I've heard good things. The next prompt is to just read one tome, so I can pick anything for that. That's like a free-for-all. And I do have a few free-for-alls, but I will save those till the end. The next prompt is a tome written by a Black author. Children of Blood and Bone by Tome Topple. I've heard really good things about this. It is a middle grade, so I'm hoping that it's going to be a fast read, but I've heard really good things about the mythology, and I'm really interested in learning more about African mythology. And I've heard that it's got Avatar: The Last Airbender vibes, so I'm really excited about that. Next up, book from a genre that you don't really read. Inkheart. Inkheart is a middle grade, and I don't read as much middle grade as I want to, and so this would be perfect for this because it is big. There are 3 of them in the trilogy and they're all big, but it's a middle grade, so hopefully I'll fly for it, but who knows. This follows a girl and her father, when he reads aloud, the words come to life. People can come out of stories and people can get sucked into stories, and lots of mischief happens. Also for this prompt, Cress by Marissa Meyer, book 3 in the Lunar Chronicles. I haven't read book 2, so this is a maybe, because I did read the first book really fast, and so if I can read the second book, which doesn't quite count as a tome, then I can read the third one. Next up is tome with the most pages, and I think that's War and Peace, but considering it's 2 books, both are tomes by themselves, you can count them as separate books, and so the next biggest book would be Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. However, if I don't want to read those ones, then the next 2 biggest books I have on my TBR are Inheritance by Christopher Poloni and The Wise Man's Spear by Patrick Rothfuss. Both of these books are parts of series that I need to continue. This one is the last book, and this one is the second book in a trilogy, though the third book hasn't come out yet, so these 2 I really need to read, which is why they're here. So those are all the prompts. Now, I did say that I had a few options for the read one tome, and when I say a few, I kind of went a bit off the rails, so let's do a lightning round. Leviathan Waits by James A. Corey. I need to read more sci-fi. I've heard that the Expanse series is really good and the TV show is really good, and I want to see what it's all about. So a sci-fi might just be the book to sort of jazz things up a bit. The Book of Dust, Volume 1, La Belle Sauvage. I really liked his Dark Materials series, and so I have to get round to this book at some point. This book is in pristine condition, and I got it from the charity shop for £2, which is a steal. It's just perfectly perfect. The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. This book intimidates me because not only is it big, but it's a part of a really big series of 14 books, and I'm scared to start it, but this might just be the push I need. This is a very long epic fantasy series. A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. This is an urban fantasy about witches and vampires and werewolves sort of in, I think, London. And so this is quite different to everything else on my TBR. And I've heard really good things about the trilogy. I've just not read it yet. Here's something different. Illuminae. Now, if you've not heard about Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This book is quite small, but it is 600 pages. It's just one of the heaviest books I've ever felt. And it's really, the pages are quite thin. And if you look, it's a mixed media style book, and so I think I will fly straight through this, and so it's perfect to put on this TBR to try and get as many big books down as I can off my list. It's a sci-fi following two teens who are on different spaceships trying to flee, but one of the spaceships doesn't quite have enough fuel. And so it sounds really tense. A Clash of Kings, Book 2 in George R.R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire series. He hasn't finished the last two books yet. People don't know if he ever will, but I still want to read what is of this series so far. But it's going to take me a while. An epic fantasy following knights, deceit, politics, murder. Lots of murder. It's really unfortunate. Now for a couple of recently acquired YA hardback. Suzanne Collins' A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the Hunger Games prequel. I've heard a lot of bad things about it, but I ain't gonna let them get me down. I'm a very optimistic person and I enjoy a lot of things, and so I think I'm gonna enjoy it, especially since my cover is so nice. A House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, the first in the Crescent City series. I'm not in a huge rush to read this, as I know it's part of a series and this is the only one that's out yet. But I've heard really good things about it and I just want to see what everyone's talking about. And finally, the last book on my list might be a surprise. Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer, the new Twilight book. This follows the first book, Twilight, from the perspective of Edward. I've read Twilight recently and I'm actually interested to read this because there were quite a few bits where Edward wasn't in the book. Now I know it's a trash fire, but it's a good trash fire. I really enjoyed reading Twilight, even though there's no diversity. It's bad. The series as a whole is very misogynistic, and the diversity that is included of the Native Americans, lots of Native Americans have come out and said that is bad representation, and so I know it's problematic, but I still want to read it. But since I know it's problematic, I can sort of read it with a critical mind. This book is actually quite large. It's like 750 pages. Whereas the original Twilight was 450 pages. Can Edward be 300 pages more interesting? Only time will tell. So there we have it. The longest list of books you'll ever see, ever. It's just a really long list of books. So there we have it. Too many books to hold. How many will I read in the 2 weeks allotted time? Well, I'm optimistic, but I'm also realistic. If I can get 3 read, I'll be really happy. Thanks for watching. Links are where links are. I'll see you soon.